Welcome to the Organized Investor Podcast with Jerry Goodman and Megan Hubbard from Tennessee Wealth Management. Think of these pod classes as a college of knowledge, and the curriculum is an inside look at how we work with our clients to organize their investments, their retirement, and their affairs. Our process is certainly not the only approach, but it has served our clients well. Listening may materially improve your life as well, but for that to happen, it also takes an open mind, an interest to learn, and your trust in what we're sharing. We focus only on what is relevant, and will explain things several times in different ways over multiple classes to ensure you understand their importance. We suggest you subscribe so you'll receive reminders about the next class. And with the tools and information on our website, theorganizedinvestor.com, you can start getting organized right now.
Welcome back, students, to what is our 22nd pod class and the 16th in a series on the subject of organizing your investments. So what's your favorite legal show? Or maybe movie or series, whatever you're into. I feel like everybody has one, right? After, taking a recess from the last episode, we're actually going to resume with our deposition of my dad, Jerry Goodman, on the overall topic of organizing your investments. Now, as podcast listeners, we're going to ask that you listen closely and decide if the comments and the evidence in these proceedings are truthful, compelling, and also believable. Hello again, I'm Megan Hubbard, along with my dad, Jerry Goodman, and whoever you may be with, we're glad you're able to join us today. I'm a former first grade teacher at Christian Academy of Knoxville, and since I have a master's degree in curriculum and instruction, I'm the role of the question asker. If you've been listening, we're adding 7 ers to asker. Not really sure why.
It's a minimum of 7, actually.
I don't really know where this started and why, but now it just seems like we have to keep going with it.
Yes.
So Mr. Dad did a lot of oratorical contests. That is a really big word, oratorical.
But you pronounced it. You did a great job pronouncing it, Megan. My compliments.
Ever said that word before, but today's the day. Well, so he did do a lot of oratorical contests in high school and also in college. So he's in the role of the deponent for this pod class, or the question answer. We got to add the ers onto the question
exactly.
Answer.
Both ways.
Right.
So how about as we say some times in our little depositions here, we're going to forego the usual hear ye, since we're not really a court, we're not really in session. And I understand that I think I'm still under oath, going way back to pod class number 16 back in the olden days. But I'm happy to be re-oath if you wish. And I'm also hoping to say something funny if possible. That's my big plan. If something comes up, you'll hear it.
Well, we'll be the judges of that. So, Mr. Dad, the matter that is still before this pod class includes organizing your investments. And is it possible to materially improve one's long-term financial future? Now, in the past, you've pled guilty to having been repeating yourself because you feel pod class listeners may take a long time to actually understand the potential of the dividend growth strategy that you've been sharing. And, that's because it took you a long time as well, right?
That is correct. And even if I have to start attending Repeaters Anonymous, it's going to be worth it. So as my oldest daughter, I understand why you don't say slow learning may run in the family, Megan. That's the reason.
Yeah, that would not be farewell for me if I'm agreeing with you on that. But
true.
In the last podcast, actually, we talked about Bruce. Some of you might remember Bruce, who actually transitioned from a mere workshop attendee to a happy client for us. And he initially wanted to have his legal, tax, and financial advisor all working together to make his life simpler. That was really Bruce's whole idea of coming and chatting with us.
Mm-hmm. Well, and that's exactly what Bruce ended up with. Megan's husband, Jared, is a CPA on our team, so he does Bruce's tax returns. We both work on Bruce's investments, and we help Bruce with a local attorney for a flat fee with all of his estate planning issues. So all 3 people are not in constant communication, but we know how to track each other down when we need to. And, oh, by the way, Bruce has been able to not only get all of those 3 things taken care of, those 3 people communicating, but he's also been able to dramatically improve his long-term financial future by lowering fees, getting rid of some costs, lowering expenses, and actually improving his investment performance, the actual investment performance, which really ended up being kind of an unexpected bonus for him. He really didn't come for that, but that's what he ended up with as well.
Well, and let the record show that Bruce's overall improvement that you explained in podcast number 21 was in the tens of thousands of dollars per year, which is a significant amount of money over time, right? Like that's not a small amount of money to just scoff at. So I remember you saying before that at least half of everyone we meet with, they all have something with, the potential for material improvement. So that's where we kind of are almost like archaeologists finding where
That's
they
true.
might be able to improve their
Little buried treasures. It's true.
right.
So, and I would say that's probably correct. That's about half, at least half the people that we run into. It may not be the whole portfolio, but they're going to have something in their going on that they're dealing with their investments where there can be some material improvement. Now, the reason we like to tell this Bruce story is because, again, he just initially wanted to get the advisors to all communicate with each other, which is actually, it's a smart thing to do. But again, his little added bonus, his icing on the cake, if you will, he ended up improving his overall performance on top of that.
So it was surprising that he didn't believe how much he could actually save in just advisory fees until, you went through each account one by one with his statements. Why was that?
I said this earlier that Bruce is a very intelligent person. He's very good with math. We have a lot of smart people that deal with us, but he just needed some more information, needed a little explanation to understand how much potential room there was for improvement, with these particular investments and what was going on there. And sometimes it just takes a minute to digest the fact that maybe, like with him, somebody that you've worked with for a long time, maybe for years, like his former advisor, hadn't explained a lot of this to him. He just didn't know. No one ever told him.
So you basically helped him to make a more informed decision by explaining the high advisory fees and the mutual fund costs and, the mediocre performance, et cetera, these types of things, And isn't that what his financial advisor was supposed to be doing?
Well, you'd think. And it's true that, financial advisors, they can have different opinions or different ways of doing things. I mean, it's common. Not everybody, not every doctor, not every lawyer, not everybody of any kind of profession will do everything the same way. So this Bruce story, though, is a perfect example of why people should get a second opinion. Okay, nothing more complicated than that. Bruce had been very happy with his advisor until he actually had a chat with us and he realized, my gosh, there's a lot of room for improvement here. And that's what he ended up with.
Well, and now Bruce actually has 3 advisors working together. So I guess everything is much more organized. And oh, by the way, he's actually made a lot of money.
Yep.
A lot more money than before, right?
Exactly.
All of these pod classes, they're to explain what we do and why, correct?
That is. And in a nutshell, we suggest people, they listen to what we're sharing and let us look at maybe what you're doing currently, or you look at it yourself. But if you'd like us to take a look at it, we'll be happy to give you our thoughts. Okay. Does it cost anything? There's no obligation to do anything with us. Just let us take a look at it and we'll come back and say, here's what we see. Just like we did with Bruce.
I mean, can you make it any more clear than that?
Oh, I could repeat it 6 more times, but that pretty much sums it up. It really does.
Well, I mean, to sound kind of scholarly, I like to, sound scholarly every once in a while.
Why not?
Why not? Making a decision with too little information is by definition actually an uninformed decision. So, the fact that it's an uninformed decision doesn't necessarily make it a bad decision.
That is kind of profound, isn't it? And if you make an uninformed decision about, like let's say which shampoo you buy, well, the bad decision is not going to change your life. It's not going to wash you down the drain, to use a shampoo metaphor, if you will.
I don't know. I really am picky about my shampoo. It might for me, but for most people, probably not. But if you do make an uninformed decision about your investments, I mean, a bad decision can actually affect your life. And that could be a pretty big decision that could make a huge impact that might be negative on your life. So
yeah, it's true. And since you started up with this scholarly banter, if you will, is intelligence the same thing as knowledge? Okay, simple question.
Well, I'm pretty sure the answer is no. Intelligence is actually different than knowledge, right?
Right. I mean, Albert Einstein is an example. He used to live next door to me, by the way. Super smart guy, very, very intelligent. So, I mean, would you think he's intelligent?
I mean, yeah. He did not use good shampoo, though. I've seen some pictures of him.
Well, yeah, he had a hair issue, didn't he? But
He did.
but so he was super smart, very intelligent, but did he know how to fix a car engine?
I would say probably not. That's not his area of expertise, was it?
Right.
I
Right.
don't think.
So obviously nobody's going to know everything about everything. I mean, I met a few people that might think they do, but generally speaking, it ain't going to happen. Nobody knows everything about all things out there, do they?
Well, I mean, maybe Alexa, but
Yeah, but
anyways, not a real person, right?
well, yeah. And see, and I don't use an iPhone, so I'm not really into the Alexa thing. But that is a rather profound comment, Megan. You're kindly almost on a roll in our little pod classy here.
So we're on pod class number 22, and we've been explaining a lot of this information for pretty much the whole time. And we're going to continue to explain a lot of information to our listeners that you need to know, but information that will probably never be shared with you by your current advisor. Now, if you think your advisor is eventually going to get around to explaining any of this to you, I would say that now would probably be a good time to lower your expectations. And you may be thinking, well, my advisor, they're a great person, and I'm sure they are. Hopefully, people say that about us, that we help. But we're talking about your financial future here. We're not talking about a personality contest.
Exactly. And hopefully they'll say that I'm also somewhat funny, if nothing else. Now, in our last pod class, we talked about a mutual fund advisory program called FundSource. That FundSource program has a 5-year net rate of return of about 7.9%, and that was through March of 2024. Now, even though there's a performance summary of that same program on the investments page of our website. Now, we compared that 7.94% return to our 5-year net rate of return of our dividend growth strategy, which has been 14.06% through January 24. So 7.94 versus 14.06.
Okay, so let me just see if I'm understanding this correctly. And hopefully clarify for the listeners. So even though there was a 2-month difference in the end date, your strategy did 77% better than the mutual fund advisory program.
Correcto mundo. And that is a significant difference in the returns that our clients have experienced versus, for example, like this FundSource example that we referenced in the last podcast. And you don't have to be a brain surgeon to realize which one's going to make you more money, particularly over a long period of time.
So what would you say to somebody who's invested in something similar to this, FundSource example that we've been giving, but that has a better return or has had a better return?
Well, if they had a better return than the FundSource example, that's fine. I would say congratulations. But this FundSource example that we covered, it is similar to what people were usually going to show us when they come to see us, or they'll send us their information to review. It looks kind of like what FundSource is, okay? So I will say, well, our dividend growth strategy, this strategy of investing in good companies who constantly raise their dividends, is that always going to be a better approach? I don't know. But we do know that is what we've been suggesting to our clients, and they've been super happy with the long-term outcome of it. It's been very good.
Well, in terms of our approach, you've mentioned in several of the pod classes that these accounts are managed on a discretionary basis, but can you help us understand what that really means?
With our broker-dealer, which is Prospero Financial in Dallas, our team is classified as a portfolio manager. And what that lets us do, it allows us to manage these client assets for an advisory fee within certain rules and guidelines, okay? So that means certain advisory accounts that we manage, we have the flexibility to make adjustments to those holdings in a very timely manner without having to track down and discuss each one of these with our clients. It makes it much more efficient.
So does that help improve your rates of return?
Absolutely. And without that flexibility, I promise you that 5-year net rate of return, it wouldn't be over 14%, through the end of January of 2024. It wouldn't. And that's because, think about this. It would take a long time to track down 190 clients if we have to get approval every time we make an adjustment, even as big or small as it may be, to their account. It would take several weeks probably just to find everybody.
Well, plus mutual funds don't call, their clients to get an okay to make a change, and, neither do you.
No, well, and I would also say that we'll have periodic discussions with clients about things, but it's not like an everyday event. I mean, if I called up clients on some of this stuff, they would go, "Well, why are you calling me, Jerry? Just go ahead and do that. We trust you." And it makes it much more efficient for us to deal with these accounts.
So aren't most mutual fund advisory accounts, like the fund source example, are they also managed on a discretionary basis?
Many of them are. I mean, not all of them, but many of them. Yeah. So if you're invested in that type of an account, it means that you're not going to be given, or you're not going to be contacted, I should say, and have to give permission to make adjustments to the holdings. Okay. The firm will simply make adjustments to various mutual funds, maybe by selling two funds and replacing those with two different funds. They just do it automatically, kind of like we do, but they're using mutual funds instead of higher quality common stocks.
You're listening to an Organized Investor podcast, which makes up our College of Knowledge. Your hosts are Megan Hubbard and her favorite father, Jerry Goodman. You'll benefit most by listening to at least 12 pod classes. And the best way to be reminded is to subscribe on your favorite podcast platform.
So way back in pod class number 9, you actually explained that instead of managing the advisory accounts for their clients, many of these advisors will just, turn the account over to their company to make all of the decisions.
Yep.
For example, an advisor who has their clients' assets in a fund source account, they're not making any management decisions other than perhaps, which model do they feel is maybe appropriate for their clients?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that is so true. And many of these types of advisory accounts, they're going to be invested in either mutual funds or ETFs, which are referred to as exchange traded fund. ETF is the abbreviated version of that. And it's very often nothing more. These programs are very often nothing more than just a shelf product at your advisor's firm. Okay, they just pull it off and plug the client in, and the advisor at that point in time is kind of done. So if you're invested in one of these types of mutual fund advisory accounts, or maybe a ETF advisory accounts, you very likely are going to have some mediocre performance for the same reasons as this fund source account is that we talked about in the last podcast.
So to be clear, much of the time that, these accounts and the actual portfolio adjustments may be handled by the firm itself, which is also, that's a lot less work for the advisor, right? So
it
in that
is.
case, what's the role of your financial advisor?
Well, this is going to sound a little harsh, but they may be nothing more than just a paid salesman to talk you into doing this, okay? Because for these types of financial products, they frequently have, as we just mentioned, they have no involvement in the ongoing management. They just say, well, let's do this. And they turn it over to the firm, and it's more expensive, and they have the fees involved. So, maybe they're earning like an advisory fee, but someone else is actually managing the assets. And that's where you end up with all of this mediocre performance.
So if you have this type of advisory account, shouldn't the investor be receiving a performance report that, probably shows maybe a 5-year rate of return? And assuming they can locate that, I guess. I mean, some people might not even realize they're getting that, but can they compare that to the 14.05% 5-year track record that our clients have actually experienced?
Sure. Yeah. I mean, it's a simple thing to do. It's a perfect scenario. Now, obviously, we can't go for more than a paragraph or two without saying past performance doesn't guarantee future results, but making a simple comparison, may provide some insight to understand for your whatever account or what part of your account we're talking about, just how much room for improvement is there.
Now, before we leave this topic, I would like for you to spend some time on the, decisions being made for clients by their investment firms, and touch on maybe the reasons why we would avoid advisory accounts invested in, mutual funds and exchange traded funds.
We talked about this a couple of pod classes ago, and it's almost my favorite thing to talk about. And it's not because it's negative. It's just kind of like, it's just shocking that what we're going to explain. And so let's go back and go through this one more time. On the investments page of our website, it's kind of near the bottom, we have a summary that's titled Pay to Play. Okay. And pay to play, you might have heard about it in different industries, like, having to pay to get your potato chips on the end aisle at the grocery store or something. But this is kind of similar. Now, since you may not be able to review that summary on our website at this very moment, that summary, that pay-to-play summary, includes a diagram that we basically constructed to show the relationships between most investment firms, which they're on the left side of the page, and the relationship with the product and service companies on the right side of the page. Now, we've listed 12 investment firms on the left, and there's plenty more that we just really didn't have room to show here. But since I'm, getting tired of answering questions about this, how about, Megan, you read some of the names of those 12 investment firms, just so people get an idea of who we're referring to.
Okay, I'll do that. And, these are actually going to be in alphabetical order because that's just how my brain works. But
it's kind of like the obituaries. People die in alphabetical order too. Well, but that's a different story.
All right. The investment firms are Ameriprise, Charles Schwab. That is a really hard name to say, by the way. If you've never said Charles Schwab, I encourage you to try that. Edward Jones, Fidelity, JP Morgan, LPL Financial, Merrill Lynch, Morgan Stanley, Raymond James, UBS, Wells Fargo Advisors, and Vanguard is actually number 12 on the list. So, you've told me we didn't list the names of the products and services companies on the diagram.
Right. And that's,
right?
Yeah. And it's really because there's like a zillion of them. But it would include, it would be firms like, I'll tell you a couple, like American Funds, Putnam, Fidelity, T. Rowe Price, Hartford, JP Morgan Mutual Funds, Allianz, PIMCO, Value Line, Virtus, Fidelity. There's a bunch of them, okay? So those are the product and service companies. And these companies, they create, they manage, they distribute financial products that often end up into the accounts of the advisors. They're not the investment firm, but they're the companies that create the financial products that a lot of this money flows into.
I'm disappointed in you. Yours were not in alphabetical order.
Oh, yeah, I forgot about that. Well, it didn't matter, but sorry.
It kind of did to me. But anyways, so
we had I had American Funds first, so that was kind of alphabetical.
Oh man. So if I understand this, sometimes, these funds are actually chosen by the investor and sometimes by the advisor and, maybe sometimes by the advisor's investment firm that they're actually affiliated with. Is that correct?
That's correct. And these investment firms, again, like the Merrill Lynch's and the Morgan Stanleys of the world, all these firms have disclosed information that explains their financial relationships with these product and service companies like we just mentioned.
So let the record show that on the second page of the pay-to-play summary, there's actually a variety of web addresses that we actually easily found for all of these various investment firms that you can actually go and take a look at yourself if you would like to.
And if you'll open up that pay-to-play document that we're talking about here, it's on our website. I think it's on the back. There's links on the second page that you should be able just to click on. You may need to be on a computer to do this. It may not work on your phone, but it'll take you directly to the disclosures posted by each one of these firms. It's some interesting reading.
And if that link is no longer working, or if you actually want to see the disclosure information for an investment firm that we didn't list, just do a Google search and enter the company name along with the term mutual fund disclosure. So the company name and the mutual fund disclosure. So, search for the most current disclosures for Merrill Lynch. And the search phrase is Merrill Lynch mutual fund disclosure. And it should populate that way. Or, Morgan Stanley mutual fund disclosure, or Edward Jones mutual fund disclosure. I think you probably understand that now with these examples I've given, but it should populate for you and you should be able to click on them and read it yourself.
That's pretty much it. So if you will review the disclosures that these firms have issued, it's a rather shocking peek behind the curtains about these financial relationships that are going on between the investment firms and the product and service companies. And in many cases, this has gone on for years. So many of these disclosures are actually, you don't even have to go find them. They're actually included in the new account paperwork. So if you open up an account at one of these firms or whatnot, even in their correspondence, you've already been receiving this information from these investment firms. They've already told this to you.
So this information is given to their clients, which means they can read it.
Yeah, it does, but it doesn't mean many people are going to. or, or even more so, even understand it, because it is rather detailed, and it was written by, I don't know, probably a room full of attorneys to kind of explain what it is that's going on.
So what you're saying is it's some good sleep aid material.
Oh yeah, it can put you to sleep if you read it all.
So what will excuse me, find to be shocking in all of this?
Okay, let's start it this way. It's common knowledge that in investment firms will make like a Merrill Lynch or Morgan Stanley or even our firm, they make recommendations and they direct money to these types of financial product and service companies, these mutual fund companies or these annuity companies, if you will. These disclosures provide let's just say an inside look at the payments that are flowing back from these same product and service companies. They're flowing back to the investment firms that is sent it over there to start with.
So what I'm hearing you say is that these mutual fund companies are actually giving kickbacks to the investment firms for investing the money in the mutual funds that they're promoting.
Well, I'm not sure they would refer to it as kickbacks. They're going to use the term like these payments flowing back to the investment firms. They're going to refer to it as, let's say, revenue sharing or maybe cost reimbursement. And typically, these are going to this money that's flowing back to the investment firms. Where's that money coming from? It's coming from the internal expenses that we've talked about many times inside these funds or these exchange traded funds, these investments that we try to avoid. I'll give you an example. The 14 mutual funds in the fund source model that we discussed in the last podcast, they have an average internal cost of 0.79%. Okay, so what does that mean? It means if someone has, just as an example, they have $1 million invested in that model, 0.79% means they're paying $7,900 per year, and just for the internal costs that are buried inside of those 14 funds.
And you're saying some of the, 7,900 cost is actually flowing into these coffers of these various products and service companies. And, part of it's making its way back to the investment firms that actually made the decision to invest in those same funds, right?
Well, it's funny. I'm not saying it, but that's what the disclosures are talking about. That's what they're telling you. And if you can kind of muddle through it and read it, and it's all pretty much the same, regardless of which firm that you talk about.
So can you give us some examples? What are appetites here with what you know?
So some investment firms, if you read this, they're going to openly admit that they will not even include investments like, say, a mutual fund or an annuity on their platform unless they receive money back from those same companies. Think about that. And let me repeat that. Some investment firms will not include investments like mutual funds, annuities, exchange traded funds, certain things on their platform unless they are receiving money back from that company. They're going to exclude them completely.
So this whole process is actually called pay to play because these products and service companies, they're having to actually pay for their investment products to be available at, or maybe recommended to these investment firms.
That's what this is all about. And one investment firm even disclosed having received $377 million in a single 12-month period from these same product and service companies. Even some of the disclosures, they'll include a term called conflict of interest. I mean, I think we all know what that means. And this is going to describe the arrangements, which, like one firm, Merrill Lynch, actually mentioned the term conflict of interest 14 times in their disclosure.
So why are we talking about this? And what does this have to do with our podcast listeners?
Well, the reason we're talking about this, the reason somebody might want to be concerned about this is if their investment firm, if you're in a program like this where their investment firm is making decisions like this, are they doing it in the best interest of them, the client, or are they making decisions based upon, hey, which product and service company is going to send our investment firm back the most money? That's really what this comes down to. This is where this possible conflict of interest comes into play. And it's just one more reason why we try to avoid these mutual fund advisory programs that are invested in either mutual funds or exchange traded funds.
So does the financial advisor actually know about the pay to play relationships, between their firm and, say, the various product and service companies that they're working with?
Sure, they know that. I mean, if they don't, that's bad on them too. And if they ever pointed this out to their clients, of course they haven't. They're not going to tell that. It's kind of embarrassing. Like, who wants to go tell your clients that your firm is making these decisions, and there may be some conflict of interest about how the decisions are actually, being made.
So just to be clear, If a listener is invested in their firm's mutual fund advisory program and, their firm is actually deciding which funds to select for that program, this disclosure information may cause them to actually question if the investment firm is making the decision that benefits the client, or are they making a decision that's actually benefiting the investment firm? Is that what I'm hearing you say?
Sure. I mean, that's exactly why we bring this up. We're not trying to be negative. Look, if you look at the document called Pay to Play, it's on the investment page of our website. We're not trying to criticize anybody. Nobody's paying us to explain all this to you. We're just telling you what they're putting out there. And the reason they put it out there is if somebody has a complaint about it, they can say, well, we sent it in your paperwork. It's on our website. We told you all this, and it's not our fault you didn't read it. What we think you need to understand is that there is a potential conflict of interest with your investment firm and how they're making some of these investment decisions. And a lot of these firms, they openly admit it. And if you just read the disclosure documents.
Well, and you don't want them to shoot the messenger, which is actually you.
Yeah. I mean, I'd really appreciate not being shot, at least today. And these disclosures, they exist because the investment firm is receiving these payments from these mutual fund, these product and service companies to whom they're selecting to manage money for the same clients. Okay. So there's kind of like they're getting paid by the people that they sent the money to.
And this is happening while your investment firm is actually charging a fee to make those decisions.
Yep. And, now some of you may say, well, I'm not really surprised about all this. And I would say, well, okay, that's fine. But we're bringing it up just so you're aware of it. And it may cause you to question some of the advice that you're getting, that's coming from these mutual fund and annuity investments that you may be invested in.
So would this pay to play relationship actually explain part of the, mediocre performance that you've spoken about over the past, all the podcasts is really?
Yeah. I mean, I'd say it could play a part in it. And the only reason somebody may continue to stay invested in something, like this that has mediocre performance, maybe either their advisors are really, doesn't have a better alternative, or they're just like a really good salesperson, or maybe both. They just, they keep the client in it because it's easy and they don't have to do anything. Or maybe they just don't have another alternative.
So what else do we need to cover before, we take a recess for the day?
Well, as usual, everybody, I'm sure, is dying to hear that the rate of return that we shared are for informational purposes and that past performance is no guarantee of future results. I think we said that earlier.
Well, okay. Hopefully they don't literally die.
Well, that's true. Yeah, I didn't mean die, but yeah, they're wanting to hear all this, and the returns for each of our clients, they also are based upon the various clients' individual circumstances, such as like when they started the account, or maybe what their investment objectives were, things like that.
Anything else? Now's your chance.
Well, the rates of return for our advisory clients, they were compiled from a 1-month performance report. For each of those 190 accounts respectively. And it's way too much information to try to cover, here. So we, or even on our website in any sort of understandable way. But I'll say, rest assured, we have lots of boring documentation to back up all those statistics if somebody is brave enough to have us go through it with them. We're happy to.
Well, as I've said before, thank you for not going through all 190 accounts. That'd make for a very boring podcast. And,
Yep.
Actually, for not telling any jokes.
I know it's been tough. It's been a slow podcast tonight for humor. Sorry.
Well, listeners, please feel free to contact us with any questions that you actually might have for us. We would be happy to answer those. And also be sure to follow us on social media, such as YouTube, LinkedIn, X, and save us to your favorite podcast player to receive reminders of future episodes. We have more to share, which means you have more to learn. So join us next time. And as always, thanks for listening. And this podcast is dismissed, recessed, and adjourned until next time.
Aflac.
The information covered and posted represents the views and opinions of the guest and does not necessarily represent the views or opinions of the organized investor or TN Wealth Management. The content has been made available for informational and educational purposes only and is not intended to be a substitute for professional investing advice. Opinions expressed are subject to change without notice and are not intended as investment advice or solicitation for the purchase or sale of any security. Always seek the advice of your financial advisor or other qualified financial service provider with any questions you may have regarding your investment planning or before making any investment decision. And please consult legal legal or tax professionals for specific information regarding your individual situation. The organized investor cannot accept trade or account instructions on or through this platform. Please contact us directly at contactus@tnwealthmanagement.com or 865-415-2060 to place a trade or for trade or account-related questions. Brokerage and advisory services are provided by TN Wealth Management through Prospera Financial Services, Inc., member FINRA SIPC. The organized investor is a brand name operated by TN Wealth Management for educational platform purposes.